Draft Mechanic is a proud member of Punchboard Media. Pull up a chair at punchboardmedia.com. Draft Mechanic, episode 103.
On this episode of Draft Mechanic, we've got recent plays of Brikks, Carcassonne for 2, and Dust in the Wings, which we're putting on tap. We have a 6-pack review of Weird Dooms. Jake discusses his origins. We talk about our 6 favorite taprooms each, and we asked our Slack channel in our final round what makes a great taproom for them. So sit back, relax, grab a pint, and enjoy the show.
You've seen the future and it works to take a mile. The all is for the best in the best of our world.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Draft Mechanic. I'm Jake.
And I'm Danielle.
And Draft Mechanic is the podcast about board games and craft beer and anything we can do to tie the two together.
Here at Draft Mechanic, we like our beer like we like our board games.
Direct from the source?
Sure, why not?
Yeah, we're talking about taprooms, and I thought also since I went to Origins, Origins is a word for source, right?
Oh, I thought you just meant because you can get games directly from the publisher at Origins.
That's a much better reason. I wish I had thought of that. Hey everybody, thank you for joining us on this episode of Draft Mechanic. If you are new to Draft Mechanic, thank you for joining us, by the way, and all of our regular listeners, we love you all so much as well. You can find us on the internet at draftmechanic.net and at draftmechanic on your favorite social media, as long as that is Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, because we do not use Vero, or whatever the other one is.
What?
There's a lot. Zanga?
What is...
I
know Zanga.
We don't have a Zanga.
Nobody has a Zanga anymore.
Live journal.
We also have a Board Game Geek Guild that is guild number 2470. There will be a thread up for this episode, as there is for every episode. So if we're saying something and you have an opinion you'd like to share with the group, that is the place to do it, or one of the places to do it.
Constructive opinions, preferably.
I mean, if you share a non-constructive opinion, someone will probably just tell you that you've shared a non-constructive opinion.
We also have a Board Game micro badge. If you want to pick up the Draft Mechanic micro badge, you can definitely do that on our guild. There is a thread. We will throw Geek Gold at you if you need it. And 8 Geek Gold.
If you happen to be in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, we do twice monthly meetups. There is one on the first Thursday of every month. That's going to be at Good Road Cider Works. And this month, that is July 4th. We will be doing a meetup on July 4th if you are in town and you want to come out and play some games if you happen to be off of work. And we do one on the third Tuesday of every month. That is at Salud Cerveceria. And that will be later in the month. And the date is not noted on my notes. Third Tuesday.
Danielle, for the 4th of July meetup, should we bring games that involve fireworks? Can you think of any other than Hanabi?
I mean,
I can't think of any.
Don't bring fireworks to the bar.
Yeah, please don't bring fireworks to the bar, but bring...
Lanterns has fireworks in it somewhere, doesn't it? Is it just on the box cover there's fireworks?
I guess there is on the... Yeah. Maybe we'll play Lanterns a Dice game. That's Lights in the Sky or something is what it's called, subtitled? I don't know. Anyway, that derailed much more than we usually do. But
I blame you.
Come hang out. Boardgames.beer/events is where I post those events. And that actually, now that I've said that again, I probably should get rid of the Geekway bottle share off of there. That has passed, and I no longer have to note that on the events page. So, in random show news, for some inexplicable reason, the Mile High Game Guys invited me on for their Friday episode last week. Jeff from the Mile High Game Guys kind of texted me on Monday. He's like, hey, you want to get together and just kind of talk about board game production or podcast production just for a recording, just, for fun? And I'm like, yeah, this totally sounds fun. So we recorded on Wednesday for their Friday episode. And I promise we did talk about production of podcasts for approximately 3% of that episode.
Yeah, I was going to say for about 15 minutes of the hour and a half long episode.
Oh, they're being generous. I didn't think did we make it that long?
No.
But yeah, it was a really fun conversation between Jeff and myself. At least I enjoyed having it. And Adrian sent me a text in the middle of the night just saying that it was absolutely hilarious because he was doing the edit of the podcast before he put it up on Friday and said he super enjoyed it. Danielle, did you enjoy my antics not being reined in by you?
I only caught the last 15 minutes, but I did listen to it, and you sure are you. You boys had some fun, though. It sounded good.
Yeah, so you can check that out, milehighgameguys.com. And of course, we'll post a link to that in the show notes because that's what we do. Or rather, that's what Danielle does.
If I'm feeling generous.
In other board game news, Origins Origins has ended, and that means that the specter of Gen Con is looming upon us. It is 6 weeks away, 40 days as of day of recording.
Did you also just get the email that said Gen Con is in 40 days?
Oh, man. Did they really have to send that email? Hey, you got 40 days left until sheer insanity begins again.
It'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's always fine.
Like, at this point, it's really easy because all we have to do is check the BGG Geek Preview literally every day as they add 30 or 40 new titles a day and then, not get buried under that oncoming onslaught of new game announcements.
It'll be fine. It's always fine.
This news segment is obviously that the BGG Gen Con Geek Preview list went up a few days ago on Monday of this week, or maybe Tuesday, but it's already about 280 titles between when I wrote these show notes 4 hours ago and now when I just checked it before we were recording. This is Thursday, June 20th we're recording on as well, so a little earlier than our usual recording, so if you're looking at it on Sunday and you're like, oh, they're going to talk about how there's 450 titles on there. Well, just put this in your brain right now. There's 450 titles on there on Sunday, probably.
Probably.
I don't know. We had 700-ish titles last year, I believe.
I want to say it was slightly more than that, but either way, when it went up on Monday, there were already 167, I think was the starting number.
Oofa.
So, honestly, if you subscribe to it now, you'll get the updates every time, and if you check your BGG regularly, it's not super overwhelming, because you can look at it and be like, okay, this is what was added today.
Yeah.
Let me look at these. Do I care? No, I don't care. Okay, I'll check I don't care or not interested, which is, I guess, the nice way they made that button.
Yeah.
And then you can go through and you can sort and select which levels of interest you have. So, like, I'll go through and sort mine just to make sure I didn't miss anything for everything that I haven't prioritized, which is what it's called, prioritization. And that'll show me everything I haven't rated. And then when we get close to Gen Con, I'll go through and everything that I've rated the opposite of not interested. So
Interested?
Undecided up, undecided, interested, very interested. And it'll show me everything that I cared about when I saw it. And that's going to be way less than 900 games. That's going to be less than 100 games.
Yeah.
That's going to be probably less than 50 games. But, I can sometimes be a little cutthroat about that thing.
And we are doing all of this in service of our 4th annual Gen Con Hype List episode. Crazy to think that this will be our 4th one of where we do the big Hype List episode, where we talk about all of the things we are most excited about. But obviously that is not for another 40-ish days.
Something like that.
It's coming.
Let's talk about Kickstarter, which is another unnecessarily pre-hyped group of games.
All right, Danielle, you got the updates from last episode?
Sure. Fickle from Bard Games finished their campaign at $62,904 of their $8,000 goal with 1,005 backers. They unlocked a bunch of stretch goals, including a total of 22 decks and a randomizer to help you choose which 5 you use in the game.
That's really cool. That's a lot of extra stuff, and they just unlocked all these little bits and pieces along the way.
Remarkable Shops and Their Wares from Loresmith is funding at $54,780 of their $16,906 goal with 1,439 backers. That is, again, as of Thursday. This is ending on July 4th, so 2 Thursdays from now. And it has extra funds that will go towards more art, the shop floor plans for the book, and they won't have to do print on demand because they can now afford a full print run, which is awesome.
That's so cool. So I still got this on my start list. This might be the kind of thing I pick up just as a cool kind of coffee table kind of book. I think it's a really neat idea.
Can I give like a not really Kickstarter update that's also a Kickstarter update that I'm excited about?
Yes.
I actually got my copy of Detective City of Angels in the mail yesterday, which is a thing that's been going on for almost 2 years. I've been waiting for it at this point, because 2 Gen Cons ago I got to demo it. And then they did the Kickstarter shortly thereafter, and then it's been like a year and a half that it's been in the works, and it finally showed up, and I'm excited. That's my Kickstarter update.
Yo, that is a hefty box, too.
It is. It's got that Bullets Over Broadway, I think it's called, the expansion content, and the actual box is dense as heck.
Yeah.
So that is something we will probably be talking about soon coming up. I wouldn't be surprised if that made a co-episode with the other detective game that you probably know about.
That's a good idea. Completely different variants, perhaps?
Yeah. Just name the
Completely
same
unrelated
thing.
games that have the same name in them. Therefore, they must be compared.
Do you want to talk about some new projects?
You know what? I think I'm going to talk about some new projects. I also have two to talk about this particular episode. The first one is The Refuge, Terror from the Deep. This is coming from B&B Games, currently funding at $62,000 of its $14,000 goal with 855 backers. This one ends on Friday, June 28th with an estimated delivery of June 2020. You can get this game for $49, which actually, looking at the components, is a pretty darn good deal. This is a 1 to 6 player miniatures enhanced card play and maneuvering game with solo, cooperative, and competitive modes. The game takes place on this ocean floor board that's split up into a grid, and you and other players are trying to get from one side of the board to the other, but you're having to compete with the Kraken, which is this really honkin' big miniature up at the top that also has these tentacle miniatures that are going to maneuver around the board, knock players around, and in the competitive mode, you're doing some card play that's going to interfere with each other. In the cooperative mode, it's actually kind of like an objective and story-based challenge, a bunch of different story-based challenges that you're going to do of your deep sea dive gone dangerous. The game so far includes 7 distinct characters to choose from with some really, really good sculpts. I got a chance to actually look at a lot of the prototype sculpts at Origins and just like really amazed with the detail on some of these sculpts. I encourage you to check out that Kickstarter page, and then obviously the Kraken mini that's probably like 2 or 3 inches square and maybe like 5 or 6 inches tall on the square base that works on that grid is really nice miniature quality there, and it's going to stare you down the whole game. The game plays in under an hour, and this is actually kind of a spin-off / sequel to a earlier game, The Refuge Race for Survival, also by B&B Games. So, Danielle, do you have any interest in this whatsoever?
Not really. I'm not really looking for something else to make me feel like I am in the deep, dark part of the ocean. I already have Subnautica for that, and I am terrified to play it.
Oh, I don't blame you for that. And I gotta say, like, the miniature sculpts on this, you got some real tentacles. So if you do not like suction cups, you probably don't want to look at these miniatures directly.
That's a weird sentence to have in any podcast.
Well, you know, we are trying to bring new content to the airwaves here.
Do you need the first game to be able to play this?
No, not at all. It's completely standalone. There is some crossover content. Like, I think there's going to be some characters or some cards that you can use in the other game and back and forth if you want to. Kind of like with like an Arcadia Quest Masmora kind of situation. Where,
okay, but you don't need to have bought that one.
Correct. You don't have to have bought it. But I guess if you want to, you can use some content from one in the other. But I gotta say, the game itself looks really cool. It like physically looks awesome on a table. The gameplay looks interesting. You got some really fun cards that manipulate the way you're moving around on the board, and also the board itself is split up into different spaces. You've got caves and whirlpools and these other items or these other spaces that are going to interact with each other. So in the competitive version, there's going to be a whole lot of back and forth, probably a lot of take that, and a lot of just kind of jockeying for position as you are trying desperately to get to an escape pod on the other side of the board.
You're losing me.
One fun thing that did come up while I was talking with the B&B Games team, and specifically one of the designers, John Brieger, at Origins, is that they have an official beer pairing for this game. They have chosen Great White from Lost Coast Brewery in California. John is a listener of the show. He likes that we pair beers, and he came prepared with his own beer pairing for this game.
I like it.
Very good job, John. And I don't know, maybe someday we will come up with our own on taps for this beer game.
I don't know. It seems like they got it.
Well, we will have until June 2020 to think about the Refuge Terror from the Deep. But
I'm going to not perpetually think about that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not like it's a Gen Con you've got to worry about for a year and a half in advance.
Come on now.
All right, moving on. Darwinauts from Green Couch Games launched yesterday as of recording, and it is currently funding at $14,000 of its $18,000 goal with 331 backers. This game is kickstarting until Sunday, July 14th. It's ending on my birthday. It's an estimated delivery of March 2020 for this game, and $39 to back it, and $55 will add in the playmat with the game as well. Also worth noting is that both of those prices include free shipping. Good job, Jason. So, Darwinauts is Green Couch's second bigger box game. Generally, Green Couch Games has those kind of like double deck box size games, but with Best Treehouse Ever Forest of Fun, they moved into doing some bigger box games, and Darwinauts is one of the slightly larger box games that Green Couch Games is doing. So this is a game of tile placement, worker placement, action selection, resource scavenging, set collection, and all those really awesome buzzwords that pretty much guarantee I'm going to enjoy this. It's designed by Chris Bryan, and oh, by the way, did I mention it is art by Vincent Dutrait? Yes, it does. So in the game of Darwinauts, we have opened up a portal to another dimension. Congratulations! There's all sorts of wild new species to discover and understand, but the portal will not last forever. So on your turn of the game, you're going to be taking up to 2 actions of different actions to lay out more tiles or gather species cards or gather resources, so on and so forth, with the goal of obviously but identifying and recording the most diverse group of species, and also do some fun set collection with those species cards. The thing that makes this game really exciting to me is not just the tile laying, which is kind of interesting because you kind of want to form like really big groups of colors of the same kind of terrain, but also you don't want to leave those things unoccupied. But at a certain point, after you've expanded all the way out, the game is actually going to collapse in as the portal starts to kind of disappear, and the world disappears with it. And I just think it's a really awesome way to do any kind of tile laying game where you also have that tile removal.
It also brings a sense of urgency to the end of the game. Mm-hmm. We got a chance to demo this at Geekway to the West, and when that world starts collapsing in on itself and you see all the tiles going away, you're like, oh, I need to finish what I'm doing, because otherwise I'm going to waste all these resources that I've gathered if I don't get them, and I'm not able to record the species that I was planning to record.
Yeah, it's a really interesting balance between both wanting to explore and obviously get a bunch of resources, set yourself up for really, really great, powerful moves, but also with the knowledge that the game is going to collapse out at the end there, you've got to really be efficient with your actions and not waste any single action or any single action point, because you might just not have time to spend those resources you stockpiled.
It's also got kind of a neat mechanic where you don't get to start collecting your resources and removing your guys until you've placed all your tiles out onto the board, so you can't be holding on to potential resources for another player and just taking resources for yourself, because you've got to make sure that you don't have any tiles left in your hand when you start to collect resources. So there is certainly a give to the board before you can take from the board aspect to this game.
Yeah, there's also a lot of really interesting kind of special side actions that you can take that allows you to manipulate the tiles, moving them around or rotating them in interesting ways. It really just made me think a lot about the tile laying in general, because usually, like, we're obviously playing a lot of Carcassonnes in our game, and once you put a tile down, it's done forever. But it was really interesting to play this kind of tile laying game where you're trying to form big groups of terrain, but everything can move at any second, especially as stuff starts kind of destructing later in the game. That big swatch of one terrain that you have could just like be cut in half easily, and pretty much every single time near the end of the game. But I really dug Darwinauts. I love Green Couch Games. They're always doing some awesome stuff. So thumbs up to Jason Kotarski and crew. I hope that this one goes swimmingly for you, and you have until my birthday to back this one. Sunday,
That's
July
not helpful
14th.
To other people.
Sorry, Sunday, July 14th. So you've got, 2 weeks or so from when this is. Maybe 3 weeks from this. We're recording way in advance on this one. I'm not used to thinking that far in advance.
3 whole days.
3 whole entire days.
All right, let's talk about some recent plays. Want to wear your draft mechanic pride to your local brewery, board game meetup, or board game meetup at a brewery? Check out redbubble.com/people/draft mechanic for t-shirts.
Danielle, just when I thought we got out, they find a way to pull me back in.
I mean, you thought we were out?
Into
Into
the Carcassonne. No, I mean, okay. It's not like out, but like we're sitting on Hunters and Gatherers. It's one that's well reputed, and we haven't really narrowed down the time we want to get that one done. That's the last major Carcassonne we have to do for the Carcassonne. But when I say they keep pulling us back in, I mean like we keep coming up with little oddities that we are able to play for the Carcassonne. And for example, in this particular episode, we have Carcassonne for 2. This was a 2017 release from Hans im Glück for 2 players. It plays in 25 minutes if you're new to this zone, but frankly, you can probably get it done in 15. If you've ended up with a copy of this, you probably have played enough Carcassonne that you're going to get this done in 15 minutes. This is designed by, like, you really got to ask. It's Klaus Jürgenwerda. It has art by Ann Patsky and also Chris Quilliams. This is Carcassonne, but only for 2.
Yeah.
For 2.
And not in the way that the castle was only for 2. This is actually very close to base Carcassonne. It does come in a fun little tin, which is
cute little tin.
Very portable and durable if you're going to throw it in a bag or a backpack or something like that. And it is smaller than your regular Carcassonne tiles. Almost all of the other Carcassonne tiles, I'm pretty sure all of the other Carcassonne tiles are a standard size. These are smaller. They are travel sized, so if you have a problem seeing things that are very small, that may be a problem, but they are Carcassonne tiles, so you've got like city and road and farm, and that's about it, so you should be pretty okay. The way this works is like any Carcassonne game. It is a tile laying game where you are placing features so that they connect to other features of the same type. You want your cities to connect to your cities. You want your roads to connect to your roads. Your fields can go connected to all the other fields that are just out there. You're going to be placing your workers into the features before they complete, so that when they do complete, you will get points for them. You'll get 2 points for each completed city tile. You'll get 1 point for each completed road tile. And farmers are just the worst.
You did just fine with farming in 2.
You lay them down in the field, and they stay there forever, and then whoever has the most farmers in a field at the end of the game will get 3 points for completed city.
I can't believe you got me on that one.
You are going to continue alternating laying tiles until all of the tiles have been laid, and then you will count up the points that are left on the board. You will get some additional points at the end of the game for uncompleted features, and whoever has the most points at the end of the game is the winner of the Carcassonne for 2.
For 2. It's interesting because there are 2 significant changes in Carcassonne for 2 that are worth mentioning. First,
One is that it's smaller.
Okay, well, there's 3 significant changes then. One is that it's very small.
Well, no, I mean that in actually a different way. There are fewer tiles than there are in a regular base game of Carcassonne. So the game is not only going to go quickly because you probably know how to play Carcassonne if you're listening to this and that's how you got that game, but it also has fewer tiles, so you're going to be able to move through this in a very snappy manner, but you also shouldn't sit on features for a long time expecting to be able to finish them because you've got less material to work with.
Yeah, Carcassonne for 2 comes with 48 tiles as opposed to the, I think, 72 in the base set. I don't remember offhand, but yeah, no, 72 sounds right because it's punch boards of 12 and Carcassonne for 2 is punch boards of 8. And I know way too much about Carcassonne, don't I?
Yes.
Yes. And also, you don't have a score track on this one, which is actually one thing that kind of caught me off guard. We had to go and grab some tokens, just kind of our Keyforge little red and yellow tokens to keep score. There is no score track on this, so if you are bad at math or don't have a calculator on your phone nearby, that's something you're going to have to be aware of. I mean, it's at least worth mentioning that it doesn't come with a score track, right?
Yeah, and I guess that's part of the portability, although there's plenty of room in this tin that they could have thrown either a score track or, I don't know, even just like some D10s or something in there.
Why isn't it on the inside of the tin? That would be really smart.
Because printing on the inside of the tin is probably an unnecessary expense.
This is a very good point you've made. But, like, gameplay-wise, it's Carcassonne. It's exactly like Carcassonne, except it goes quicker. And just back to your point, you got to make sure to not waste your time on features you want to complete, and you got to really be aware of that. And that's kind of fun, actually. And we had a really good time playing this just 2-player version of Carcassonne, knowing that it was going to be shorter and quicker like that.
Yeah, and I really did enjoy the fact that it felt like I could bring it with me. We talk about Carcassonne all of the time, but our actual base Carcassonne box is a monster at this point. It's got so much junk in it. It's got so many expansions. And it is that general Euro size box that's not really super portable. And if you put it in a backpack, it's going to take up a lot of the space. Here you've got this like hard metal container that's going to protect your pieces. It's going to protect whatever tokens you put in there to keep score with, or dice or whatever. And you can just literally just throw it in your backpack, throw it in your purse, throw it in your suitcase if you're going somewhere. You'll have it. It doesn't take up a huge table space. I actually like it for portability.
Yeah, it's honestly a really good pickup, and I think it is worth your while if you like playing Carcassonne with 2 people and you're on the go a lot.
And considering the castle is the other Carcassonne for 2, and it is significantly more difficult to get and way less portable than your standard Carcassonne, this is your 2-player option.
I will definitely say Carcassonne for 2 will continue to live in the game night bag. I think it's perfect, especially to have for game nights like we do, because either somebody shows up early and we knock out a round really quick, or 2 people walk up and they're like, hey, do you have a really good game for 2 players? And now I can just be like, without a doubt, please enter the zone, the Carcassonne.
So thanks to our friend Bert, who brought this back from Germany for us.
Big thanks to Bert. Bert, you're such a good guy. Thank you so much for bringing us Carcassonne for 2, something we probably never would have been able to put into the zone without that.
Next up, we are talking about Brikks, which is a 2018 release from Stronghold Games and Schmidt-Spiele. This plays 1 to 4 players in 20 to 30 minutes. It is designed by Wolfgang Warsch, and the artist is Ann Patzke. Again, because we got some more Ann Patzke.
Good job.
This is a game of rolling, writing, and Tetris.
Yeah, I mean, you could really just say Tetris the roll and write, and you would pretty much have a fundamental idea of how Brikks works. But I will kind of break it down to the more gameplay mechanic level for you as well. By the way, this is just got released by Stronghold Games here in the US, so even though it is 2018 over there, it is 2019 over here. You can go and find this at your local Stronghold dealer. That sounds weird when I say it like that, right?
Yeah, but it feels fitting too.
Yeah. So in Brikks, you have a sheet of paper that looks like an arcade cabinet. It has a grid of squares that's, 11 or some rows tall, 10 rows wide, and it's going to look like you're playing a game of Tetris or falling polyominoes, or falling tetrominoes. There we go. This one is strictly tetrominoes, as a good game of Tetris should be, because tet is 4, and that's how it works.
It's full of heads?
No, like the number 4, tet.
Wrong language.
Tetrominoes. On each turn of the game, the active player will roll a d4 that is sharp and pointy and difficult to pick up off of the table.
It's a d4.
And also a d6 that has one of 6 colors on it. Depending on what comes up, you're going to look at another sheet, or the back of a roll and write sheet, and it's going to give you basically a table of different tetromino pieces. Each color relates to one of the shapes you are expecting to see in a game of Tetris. For example, the white one is your T shape, the red and the blue ones are the S shape. The black one is either squares or straight, 4x1 lines.
Because you don't need to rotate that all 4 ways.
Yeah, thankfully they didn't just make an entire row of square that you can't rotate and do anything with. But depending on what comes up, the active player can choose to re-roll, or they can hold that. If they re-roll, they must keep the second result. And then every player is going to have to place that block using general falling tetromino rules, where the shape will drop in from the top and you have to lay it on the bottom or whatever, stack it on top of other blocks that do exist there already. You do have a few ways to mitigate this, however. As you go on through the game, you get quote-unquote power. You start out with 4 of the power icons lit up at the bottom of your arcade cabinet sheet, and as you cover over specific dots with a block of the same color, you will gain energy that way as well. Energy allows you to rotate a block, basically, to go left or right in the table and get a different orientation of that block. And you can actually also spend 5 energy to completely override it and get whatever block you want at all and place that block on your particular sheet. The game will continue until people can't place blocks anymore, just like you would expect a Tetris-style game to work, except for the fact that clearing lines doesn't actually clear them off your screen, because that would take way too much eraser or some kind of weird, crazy mechanic, or actually, now that I'm thinking about it, some kind of rotating whiteboard might be the way to do that in the future. Yeah.
But then you wouldn't be able to sandwich the 2 lines together.
Oh, that's also true.
Anyway, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, it doesn't happen. Nothing clears off. But you will get points at the end of the game for having complete lines all the way across. Also, if you're able to lock in 2, 3, or 4 lines with a single piece, you're going to get bonus points that are on a different section of your arcade cabinet. You also have some bombs that allow you to skip up to 3 pieces for up to 3 pieces during the game, and you can choose to not use those and get some points for them. But the game will continue until you run out of places to put blocks, and then you'll be like, do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Oh, no, that's Dr. Mario's sound. That wasn't Tetris. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's only biominoes?
Yeah.
Dominoes.
Moving on. Danielle, did this feel like Tetris to you?
Yes and no. That's a difficult question, because it definitely functions like Tetris. If you said to me, make a Tetris board game, okay, yeah, this is a very good facsimile of a Tetris board game. But the problem I kept having was the fact that I was working on a flat sheet of paper, and it didn't give me the verticality that even a video game of Tetris has. Even though that's still a flat screen, obviously, because it's a monitor, it is falling down, and it's really easy to visualize how gravity is going to work on the pieces on that video game. Whereas in a horizontal roll and write, a lot of times I was looking at spaces and going, okay, I can fit this piece in here. But that's not how this game works, because it's like Tetris. You don't just have to be able to fit a piece into that space like essentially every other roll and write, where if you can fit something in there, if it fits, it sits. But you had to be able to get the pieces in there, and I didn't have that feeling when I was placing things, which is probably why I didn't do terribly well at this game. So I guess if it had felt more like Tetris to me, I would have done better, but I just couldn't really make that translation from a vertical nature to a horizontal nature in my head, which is probably a me problem, but I'm probably not the only person that will have that problem.
I often found myself kind of out of energy and without any kind of ability to manipulate the blocks.
I have days like that as well.
And it's kind of a funny feeling in a way for Tetris, because I'm used to losing at Tetris because stuff got way too fast and I just make this ridiculous stack of pieces in the middle of the table, because that's how you play Tetris. You fail miserably. And to not be able to turn a block just feels kind of weird, but I guess it's as accurate as you could do a Tetris-style game as a roll and write. And like, I feel weird that most of my complaints with Bricks is that it's not Tetris and it doesn't play like the video game of Tetris, which is like the whole point of this being a pen and paper Randowriter, because obviously it can't. So, like, it does the things you expect it to do correctly, except for the things it physically can't do. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I get it, but I have a similar feeling. Like, it definitely is a nice facsimile for a roll and write of Tetris. I'm just not sure I wanted a roll and write of Tetris.
Yeah, and I've played this at a bunch of different player counts. We did play the 2-player game that has slightly different rules. Rather than being a points game, it is a survival game. I do think it's really cool the way that they made it a head-to-head version that really replicates a lot of Versus kind of Tetris. Like, I'm sure a bunch of listeners out there have been playing Tetris 99 on their Nintendo Switch, and you're used to, when you have a really good move, blocks fall on other players. And that's been a Tetris trope pretty much forever. So in the 2-player rules, if you are able to get energy up to one of a few marked spaces on your energy bar, or if you clear 2, 3, or 4 lines, you actually get to draw single square blocks on the other player's sheet, just kind of like the blocks that would usually fall in if you got a really good thing, and they just, throws in some junk blocks. And I thought that was really smart, and I loved that they included that in there. And frankly, I don't see a reason that you can't play that with a 3-player game, except that it would just get probably too crazy, too fast. And again, then the thing is only too tall, or is only so tall, so that you'll get to the point where if you were playing that stuff with more than 2 players, you would obviously fill up the sheet really fast. So I guess I now understand that I've said those sentences why they didn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, also it's possible that 2 players would go out in the same round at that point. I mean, it's already possible that 2 players would go out in the same round, technically, because you have to place everything that is rolled. But I would assume you then do regular scoring or probably just play again, honestly.
But I think Bricks is worth a look at, especially if you like Randowriters. If you're a big Tetris fan in general, it's worth playing to see how that could translate into a Randowriter. I can't really imagine somebody making a Tetris board game that is better than that, because there's those things like the gravity and the panic of speed that can't really be replicated, or at least I'm struggling to think of a way to replicate those more accurately in a thing where you've got to actually do the manipulation yourself.
Yeah, I would say if you don't have any Randowriters in your collection, this is probably not the place I would pick to start, because it is sort of a different feeling from most of the other Randowriters that we've played. But if you're looking for something that is different than all of the other tile placement games that you may have, especially if you played any of the games that we talked about in the last episode, where we were talking about all those Uwe Rosenberg polyomino games, if you're looking for something that's a little bit different and at a nice low price point where you can try it, and if it's not your thing, it's not your thing, this is certainly different to that.
Cool. And if you are looking to start your Randowriter collection, Knockmall is coming to the U.S. very soon. It will be called Encore? Oh, yes. Encore. Bonacore says it should be available Gen Con, which is awesome. And he also let me know, if it sells well, wink, 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 they're going to bring the expansion boards over too. Wink, wink, wink. There's still 3 that I don't have yet.
Yeah, he let BJ know that on Gumbo Live.
Dr. Gumbo scooping us again!
Yeah.
I've decided, actually, we're going to call him Mr. Board Game Gumbo. Or Mr. from Board Game Gumbo, because it's BJ from Board Game Gumbo is his full name. So Mr. from Board Game Gumbo.
Can we just call him BJ?
No.
Oh.
No. Sorry.
Dag.
Anyway, that's Bricks. And that is the end of that talk about Bricks. Up next, we have a game that I picked up at Origins. This is Dust in the Wings. It is a 2018/2019 release from... Yes? No, Wings. Wings, not wind.
Do you want me to start singing the Reading Rainbow song again?
No, please, carry on with Dust in the Wings. Board and Dice is the publisher. This plays 2 to 4 players in 20 to 30 minutes. It's designed by Dennis Kurps, Christian Crutchton, Jean-Claude Pellin, with art by Odysseus Stamaglau. This is an abstract, pattern-making butterfly grid game that is definitely not Time Stories.
No, it's not, but it really looks like it when you're looking at the box cover. It's that plain white box cover, which has a really bright, colorful butterfly and the title written out in a nice cursive font. There's nothing else on the front of the box other than the designer's name, and it looks like a very big Time Stories.
Yeah.
But it's not, which, frankly, is fine.
Yeah. Was this better than Madame?
I'm not going to talk about that.
All right, Danielle, tell us how to butterfly.
Okay, so in Dust in the Wings, you are going to start by laying out a bunch of butterfly wooden tokens onto the board matching the number of flowers that are on each of the spaces. So you're going to have the same start at the beginning of every game, but a different distribution of the 3 colors of butterfly. You have blue butterflies, yellow butterflies, and red butterflies. There are going to be 6 objective cards that are flipped up. 3 of them are going to be specific combinations of colors of butterfly, and 3 of them are going to be something having to do with the number of butterflies on a group of tiles. So it may be like a column of 5 has more than 21 butterflies in total, or you have equal numbers of butterflies on all of the 4 quadrants of a square of tiles. So those are the sort of placement goals that you're going to be doing. On your turn, you are going to pick up a tile's worth of butterflies, all of them, and then you are going to drop them out Mancala style on any of the adjacent squares. If you've played 5 Tribes, you're very familiar with this. So you're just going to lay out 1 butterfly each, your choice of which one goes onto which square, and you are hoping that the last square that you place a butterfly onto fulfills one of the objectives, whether it be one of the color combination objectives or it is part of one of the spatial objectives. If so, you take that 1 card and you put it into your score pile. You can only take 1 card per placement, so if you have fulfilled maybe both a butterfly grouping objective and a spatial one, you have to decide which one is worth more points, which is a pretty easy decision. When a card is taken, you will actually place out additional points gems onto the butterfly collection cards. They have spaces for 3 points gems, which can be either 1 or 2 points, so they will have variable value throughout the game. If at any point you need to place an additional points gem onto a butterfly grouping objective, and there are no spaces left, all 3 are already full, that card is discarded, a new one is flipped out, and the gem is placed onto that. So every butterfly grouping value card will always be worth at least 1 point, but it can be worth up to 6 if it's really lucky. And if somebody left it there for 6, then they should have gotten it earlier. You're going to keep going until there are no more points gems left in the bag, at which point everybody is going to count up the points that are on their spatial cards in front of them and the gems that they've gotten off the butterfly grouping cards in front of them, and whoever has the most points is the best butterfly.
The best butterfly.
You can't tell me that's not how it goes. I didn't read the rules, so that's what I'm saying.
Okay, well, they're the best butterflyer. See, I was just asking how you like butterfly a chicken breast or something. You cut it like down the middle and you
cut it
right?
down the middle,
okay.
Not all the way through, and then you flatten it out.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for telling us about the game, though, because that's much more relevant to this podcast.
Yes.
So, Dust in the Wings, super simple, abstract. There's a little bit of strategy depth there, too, as well. You got to really look at the board, and you can't really plan super far ahead, I feel. You know, obviously want to wait until it gets around to you. You might have like 1 or 2 things you're thinking about doing. But I generally found when it got back to me, I didn't have a hard time finding something that worked. And I think that's a strength of the different objective cards that are out there. Like, it was never impossible to find something that would get me the points I wanted. Generally, I had to, take a look at it for a little while and kind of work backwards from the position I wanted to end up in to find a tile that had the butterflies I needed. But I wouldn't really call it a challenging game, but it is a pleasant game to play.
Yeah, it's certainly not a challenging game. I agree with you. There are a lot of times where all of the spatial cards will be going towards the same direction. Maybe they'll all say you need to have a high number of butterflies in a specific region, more than 17 in a 3 square area or more than 21 in a full row or something like that. In which case, everybody's going to be trying to move towards those if they're trying to get the spatial objectives. Everybody's going to be trying to group the butterflies together in one general area. So if you're there, then you go for those. And if you're not there yet, you try to group everything together and you go for one of the butterfly combinations. Or, if one of the butterfly combination cards has a lot of points on it, like I said earlier, you're going to want to take that before it becomes worth more points and somebody else takes it. It's not a difficult game, but at the end of every game of this, I was like, oh, that was really nice. There is, and I think we talked about this when we were talking about Wingspan, there is something to be said for a game just being really nice and pleasant, for it having decisions, but not like brain-burning, crank your brain until it lights on fire decisions. This is a really simple game that has a nice, pleasant theme, and it's fun to look at, and it makes me sing Dust in the Wind or the Reading Rainbow theme song, and I like it. It's not, like, life-changing.
Yeah, no, it's very pleasant, and I think that this is the kind of game that is like we bring this up very often, perfect for the game bag, perfect for the game night, because it does draw a crowd. It does have really great production. The wooden butterflies are very crisp and clear for the most part. The board is very, colorful. Yeah.
The butterflies are also slightly different shapes. So if you are colorblind, they are differentiated by shape as well. Not super strongly differentiated, so you are going to have to pay attention if you are completely colorblind. But they are primary colors, so hopefully that'll help you out as well. There's no like red and green. There's red, yellow, blue.
Yeah, but I feel like this game could appeal to a wide group of people. It's great for people getting into the hobby and learning about abstract and pattern building and stuff like that. You could probably play it with really young players as well.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And at the same time, like a gamer like me, it has enough to it that I could put this in between other games. It's a good palate cleanser at a heavier game night as well. Because you get to, get that really nice table presence, and you get to really make some good decisions and be like, oh, that's how I'm going to get those 3 red and 1 yellow over there. I didn't think about that, and I just stare at it for a second, but I found that combination that works.
The box is a little ridiculous, though.
Yeah, there's a lot of empty space in the box, and I feel like, this could have been like a 10 by 10 by 1 box instead of a Ticket to Ride size box. But
it's the thickness of the box that would be the only thing that reduces, because you do have to still get the board in the box, which is, I guess, always the problem with games that have a non-modular board.
Right.
Still got to get the board in there. But there is definitely, like, the card wells are 2 inches deep for maybe 20, 30 cards.
Yeah, there's a lot of extra card well. Oh, that's a decision. But
okay.
I mean, standardized box sizes, something to be said for that. They look good on a shelf. They fit well in the game bag. But it could have been smaller. Anyway, Dust in the Wings. I dig it. Maybe we choose some beers for it?
Yeah, we definitely do that.
Let's do that. For more information on the beers we chose to pair with today's game on tap, check out the show notes section at our website, draftmechanic.net. So, we've got some beer pairings for Dust in the Wings, a 2019 release from Board & Dice, 2 to 4 players, 20 to 30 minutes, designed by Dennis Kurpz, Christian Crutchton, Jean-Claude Pellin, and art by Odysseus Stamaglau. Danielle, will you begin?
First up, from Diebold Brewing Company in Denver, Colorado, which actually, if you listened to your interview with Jeff, he talked about Diebold and extolled their virtues, so I was very happy to find, when I was just looking up butterfly dust beers, that there is a beer called Mariposa Pale Ale. This is an American pale ale, which is 6% ABV and 39 IBU. It has light pine and biscuity caramelly aromas with a tangy bitterness. This is available year-round on draft from them.
Yeah, and I actually checked with Jeff. This will be released in cans on the 29th of this month, June.
How topical.
How topical.
Don't rub beer on yourself.
I mean, if you spill beer on yourself, get a napkin.
Yeah.
Yeah, or lick it up.
No.
What? You've never licked beer off your arm?
We are not having this discussion.
All right. Well, anyway, Sycamore Brewing in Charlotte, North Carolina has a beer called Rainbow Dust. It's an American IPA, 7.1% ABV. This is an IPA brewed with 6 hop varietals. That's 6 of them. That's how many objective cards there are at any given time in Dust in the Wings, so it works for that as well.
And I mean, if you put dust on a butterfly, the dust is going to look rainbow colored because it's on the butterfly, right?
Sure. Yeah, anyway, it's available in 16-ounce cans. It is a summer seasonal, or a roughly now seasonal.
Yeah, they just said, like, available seasonals, and in North Carolina, this is well into summer. It's been hot here for a minute, so this is their summer seasonal, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Almanac Beer Company in Alameda, California has another beer called Mariposa. I get both of them.
Yay.
It is a sour, and it is 7.2% ABV. This is a dry hopped sour blonde ale aged in wine barrels with Mariposa plums. It is available in 375 milliliter bottles, which is the small bottles if you are used to the Almanac bottles, the ones with little shoulders on them.
Little baby bottles.
And it is rotated. I mean, they sort of rotate what they're brewing. They're not releasing it right this second, but they release it on a rotating availability, so check it out because it sounds real delicious.
Next up, from Hoppes Brewing Company in San Jose, California, we have Butterfly Wings. It's a New England IPA, 7.8% ABV, 28 IBU, and is a double dry-hopped New England IPA with a yeast strain chosen to bring out the fruit notes, specifically pineapple, mango, and stone fruit in the hops. Ooh. And this one is on tap right now? Right now? This exact moment?
Yeah, and I feel a little cheaty about it. It is technically named after the Butterfly Wings Nebula. It is the 7th in their Nebula series. But you know what? It's called Butterfly Wings, and when you pour it out, you won't know that it's named after the nebula. You'll just be like, I'm drinking butterfly wings and I'm playing this butterfly game.
Yeah, secrets.
Our final choice is going to be from Solemn Oath Brewery in Naperville, Illinois, and it is Butterfly Flash Mob, which is a Belgian IPA.
What a great name.
It is, and it is a good beer, too. I know you've had this one in the past. It is 7.3% ABV, 75 IBU, and it is an IPA with aggressively piney and citrusy hops and fermented with fruity Belgian yeast. This is available year-round in their tap room, but they have definitely canned it, and people are drinking the cans, so they are not listing it as currently sold in cans, but I bet if you were in the Illinois area, you could probably find some.
Yes.
I also want to point out that we did not use any beer named Papillon because I'm leaving my options open in case we decide to do an on-tap for Papillon.
Got to be prepared. You never know what's going to happen in the future of Draft Mechanic. I know what's going to happen immediately in the future of Draft Mechanic.
It's a Gray Fox bump.
It is a Gray Fox bump.
When the zombie horde comes for you, you need to be quick about killing them off, pushing them back, and getting the heck out of Dodge.
And that's exactly what you're doing in Run Fighter Die Reloaded from Gray Fox Games. Players each roll their dice to be able to thin the ever-encroaching plague of the undead, gain followers and loot, and explore new locations to make it out to the town line alive without too many infected in their own group.
Gray Fox has upgraded their popular title, Run Fight or Die, to reduce fiddliness, streamline dice and character combos, add follower health, and modernize the art and miniatures.
Whether you're a fan of the original or this standalone title is your first trip to the Run Fight or Die universe, check out Run Fight or Die Reloaded from Gray Fox Games.
Gray Fox Games, quality games, cleverly crafted.
Danielle, this has been a pretty good episode so far. Very chill, kind of casual. So I think we should just roll into a six-pack. Does that sound good to you?
Sounds fine to me. It's what's
Hey,
on the
Siri,
notes.
set a timer for 15 minutes.
Your timer is set for 15 minutes.
All right,
Sorry,
go.
What? We're talking about We're Doomed, which is a 2019 release from Breaking Games, which plays 4 to 10 players in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Art and design by Mike Horton. You've got 15 minutes to get this rocket off the planet with as many people in the game as possible. Now go.
All right, so let me start out by explaining basically that We're Doomed is complete and utter nonsense, and it should be treated as such the entire time. Because if you treat this as a game that is serious, with really serious consequences, except for the explosion of the entire world, you're going to have a bad time. So, in a game of We're Doomed, everybody's going to sit around the table. You have the box of the game out, open in front of you. It has a big old, collecting zone in it, and you're going to have a 15-minute sand timer. At the beginning of the game, somebody's going to flip over that 15-minute sand timer, and the game will begin. Each player is representing a government head of some kinds. You have theocracies, corporatocracies, technocracies, and other kinds of ocracies that I don't have the time to think of right now. But on your turn, you're basically going to take one of 5 different actions. You can choose to produce some resources, which are just generic white tokens that are thought of as resources. You can gain influence, which is a black token that has like the Illuminati eye of all-seeing knowing on it, and you can choose to do that. Or you can choose to invade another player, take some of their resources, or maybe propagandize and take some of their influence. Or if you have a whole bunch of resources, you can just nuke a player and they're out of the game entirely.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's not good if you were that player, but it might be good if you're other players. But after everybody's gone around and you've taken one action, you're then going to move on to the contribution phase, where everybody is going to decide to throw some of their resources into the pot that is the box, because that represents a project. Did I mention, by the way, the world's going to explode in 15 minutes and we've all decided we're going to build a rocket to get off of it?
Sort of.
Whether or not I did, that's what's happening in this game. And if we don't get 40 resources in that thing, there's going to be no rocket at all. And then every 10 resources above 40, we'll get some extra seats on there.
Asterisk.
When the game finally does run out, the timer runs out and everybody goes like, oh no, it's the end of time. The rocket's going to take off and you're going to have however many seats there are in the rocket, and whoever has the most influence is going to get on the rocket first, followed by second and third and fourth, and probably not third or fourth, because throughout the game, none of you have thrown your resources into the rocket, and we really need those resources in the rocket, otherwise we're all going to blow up, and that's bad. Let me complicate it a little bit more. Depending on who threw the most resources in any particular round, that player is going to take a deck of event cards, and they're going to draw the top one. About a third of them are black color cards that are going to be private, that you read only to yourself. They give you some kind of instructions or something like that. And then the other 2/3 of the deck are these white cards that you read aloud publicly to everybody. For example, maybe this one says, put it in front of another player, and every time that they want to go, they have to count all the way from 1 to 60 before taking an action. Please, could you count any faster? We need to get off this planet now. There's other ones that will change people's positions around, or maybe you'll just have an NPC come into play with 30 influence, and you can't nuke them. They're just there. You better build 2 rocket seats, otherwise we're not getting off this planet. That's bad. Maybe there's some that are outside of the game world. Maybe, I don't know, you have one where you can't touch your phone, or the other stuff. I'm stalling. What am I doing? What are some other things?
You touch everybody on the shoulder and get shoulder checked into a glass door.
I was kind of hoping you'd bring up the other rule of the game, that if a player stalls while making a decision, everybody else starts counting down from 10, and if they get to 1, that player is out of the game because they wasted our time. This planet's going to blow up. At the end of the game, maybe something gets off the planet, maybe not. Who cares? You just had 15 minutes of insanity, and we have 11 minutes and 22 seconds left to talk about this game. Danielle, how do you feel about We're Doomed?
This game is complete and utter nonsense. I have played it a good number of times, and I have never really felt the same way, because the players are part of what makes the game, and those event cards are part of what makes the game. Because each of those event cards is going to change the game in a new way. Maybe suddenly, instead of trying to build all the seats on the rocket, you want to have no seats on the rocket, and that's how you win, which is a legitimate condition that could possibly be one of your endgame conditions. Or maybe now you can only ever build 1 seat on the rocket, so now it is just about nuking the other players and gaining a whole bunch of influence yourself and finding out how to manage to get them to not nuke you. How are you going to do that?
Or maybe you're in a non-aggression pact with another player, and if both of you don't get off the planet, you both lose. But if you do both get on, then that's the only possible way you're going to win. There's all sorts of weird little cards and fun twists and turns that make this a game more about discovering what the next turn is going to hold, rather than what grand strategy you're going to play in this particular game, because you're not going to have any particular grand strategy in this at all. Don't strategize. Strategize a little bit, but strategize just to get enough resources to nuke that guy across the room.
I guess one of the things we didn't actually talk about is the fact that everybody has their type of government at the beginning of the game, but you can definitely have that switch throughout the game. So maybe you have an ability that allows you to gain more resources at the beginning of the game, and you're really getting a whole bunch of resources, you're collecting resources, and you're always getting those event cards. That's really strong and powerful. But halfway through, the government styles get switched, and suddenly you don't have that resource benefit anymore, but now you have an ability that allows you to nuke other players for cheaper. Well, that's convenient now, isn't it? I guess we're going to have fewer players in this game.
Yeah, it's going to make it easier for me to get on the rocket. I completely forgot to mention that. Every one of the different government societies has their own special power. Maybe they gain resources faster, or they gain influence faster, or they can invade for free. There's one that's nuke for 5 instead of 8, and then there's another one that I think when you invade, you get more resources or something like that. I don't quite remember. But there's a lot of things going on in this. A few things that I will say as drawbacks to this, kind of going back to what you said about you have to be playing, it matters more with the players. If you have players that aren't into this kind of complete and utter absurdity...
Which is reasonable. There are a lot of people who this game is not going to be for.
Absolutely. And those people aren't going to have a good time with this game. And frankly, that could just kind of deflate the whole game. And you have to know what you're getting into to play a game like this. You have to accept the fact this is going to be utter nonsense and completely insane for the next 15 minutes. And maybe more, because there is one there that you flip over your sand timer. And I do know that Jeff mentioned on the Mile High Game Guys that they had a game where they had to flip it over with about 15 seconds left to go. And there were only 2 players left in the game. That probably went on far too long.
Conversely, they could have just stopped. It's not like you get a whole bunch for winning this game. There's not going to be any validation that you had a really good game. You're going to win this game because you lucked into it and because you were having a ridiculous fun time. So while I've enjoyed this game, I never really felt like I was either clever or really strategizing in any good way while I was playing it. I was just being ridiculous, and everybody else was being ridiculous. And at one point, the Coca-Cola Corporation saved everybody from everything.
That was really nice of them. I do appreciate that. I'm glad that they also have Vanilla Coke Zero, because that's the only beverage that I want to drink anymore.
Cool.
I think that really winning in a game of We're Doomed comes down to whether or not you come away with a great story. If you listen to the Mile High Game Guys, because we played this a whole bunch with them at Geekway, you will hear the stories about there was one particular game where somebody had drawn the card and had been out for a few rounds of if you touch your phone, you're out of the game because it's a media blackout or a communications blackout. And shortly after that card was drawn, one player pulled their phone out of the pocket, eliminating themselves, and chucked it across the table at Jeff, eliminating him as well.
Because Jeff's not an absolutely terrible person who would let somebody else's phone bounce off him onto the floor.
It's just crazy stories like that. And I alluded it to it in the Mile High Game Guys interview, and you alluded to it earlier, we had one particular game at Good Road last week where one of the cards that I drew is I have to walk around the room and give a rousing speech to everybody else saying how great it's going to be. And it also tells me that if I tap people on the shoulders, I will get extra resources and influence and get all this great stuff. And then at the bottom of the card, it says if you touch somebody's shoulders more than once, you lose all your influence. At which point, Danielle ran around the table and shoulder checked me into the garage door of Good Road Cider Works.
I didn't break it.
You didn't break it. You didn't break me. Everything turned out to be relatively okay.
Yeah.
But the stories is where the fun of this game is. And there's some other fun stuff that I will leave you to discover if you get a fresh, new, out-of-the-box copy. And by the way, do not shuffle the deck. If it is a fresh, new, out-of-the-box copy, don't look at the event deck at all. Just draw the first card off it.
We've got to be running low on time. I feel like it is worth saying this is a game that is better if you're drinking.
Yeah. And the other thing I will say is that I would never play this with a small group of people as well. I don't think 4 or 5 is going to work for this. That 8 to 10 is the spot you want to be.
Yeah, definitely.
And this should really be in the end of the night kind of closing zone for your game night. Or unless you're just like really getting into it. Maybe it's the midday thing. You know, like, I'm wondering if this is the kind of game that we would take to, like, a full day, big board game day kind of deal like we did last year at Good Road. Would this be good in the middle of the day? Could you play this at 1 or 2 o'clock?
Now, this feels to me like it fills the moniker spot, which we always play monikers last in our evening because it gets everybody just silly. And you're not going to come from that point of being just crazy, silly, stressed out to coming back to sit down to playing a nice resource management game. That's a really hard pivot. This is going to fill that spot at the end of the night where you just want to let off some steam. You've done all the thinking you're going to do for the day, and now you just want to do something that is ridiculous to end your night, to have a fun time, to walk out laughing. And that's where this fits.
Yeah. For value, the box is $35. It's available from their website with $15 shipping, which is kind of a bummer, but I know that they are working to get this into distribution. You know, obviously they have it available early from Breaking Games' website, and I'm sure that we're going to be able to see this soon as well.
I feel like also you could use the sand timer as a timer for making hard-boiled eggs. It's a nice 15-minute sand timer. It's a weird thing, but it's what I thought of.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this will be in stock on a large online retailer as of the 23rd of June. So roughly,
that's
actually,
Sunday.
That's Sunday. Hey, this is available in the past. You can get this game if you want to get it. Yeah. Danielle, do you have any other thoughts about We're Doomed that you want to fit in here?
Not really. There's not much more to say. This is a fun game, but it is not an in-depth game.
Yeah. I think that's fair to say. I'm really glad that we have a copy of We're Doomed. We played it at Geekway 4 times, and we got this is actually a review copy from Breaking Games. I should mention that as well.
Sorry.
But I would end up getting a copy of this regardless once I had it, if I saw it at a con or if I saw it, at a local game store. I'm not super keen about paying $15 shipping, but again, you don't have to anymore. Support your publishers, and you don't have to do that anymore because it's happened in the past now. It's like magic. It's happened in the past.
I think you're thinking of history. History is things that happened in the past.
I mean, I guess magic that's happened has happened in the past as well, right?
Anything that has happened in the past.
Timer's up.
Well, I thought you said we had 15 minutes. That didn't feel like...
A lot of things can change in a game of We're Doomed, right?
That's fair.
Well, We're Doomed. Not like in the actual immediate sense, but the game We're Doomed is a game that you can play.
From Breaking Games.
Yeah, I would recommend playing it because it is a heck of a lot of fun if you like 15 minutes of complete and utter nonsense.
All right. Why don't we talk about some other games that you've played at conventions that maybe aren't We're Doomed?
Ooh, what a good segue.
Nah.
Yeah, convention. Actually, we did get a chance to play We're Doomed at the Punchboard Media meetup on Friday of Origins. So I guess this is as good a time as any way to segue into talking about Origins. Completely natural. It's not like we have it on a piece of paper in front of us that says Jake's Origin recap is next.
I have a piece of paper.
We do have that.
That's what it says.
I'm just trying to be magical. This is magic that's happened in the past, Danielle.
Okay.
Anyway, so yeah, I had the opportunity to go to Origins and just kind of hang out and float around and meet a bunch of people and see a whole bunch of games. And I figure now is as good a time as any to talk about it. So
It's better than most, actually.
Actually, I guess this is literally the only time. Like, no, you know what? I'm going to save this for middle of November. We're going to talk about my Origins from 6 months ago.
Please don't.
So I flew in on midday Thursday, and I got in, just kind of floated around the exhibit hall for the first 4 or 5 hours. It was like the exhibit hall was open until 6 p.m. or so. And I really feel the con was very kind of equivalent to PAX Unplugged that I went to last fall. Kind of that 18 to 20,000 people total over the whole weekend is roughly about where it was. So about the third of the size of Gen Con, which honestly is a really comfortable size. And the show floor, the exhibit hall of Origins, was big enough that pretty much everybody was represented there. I will say there were a few notable absences. I was really surprised to see AEG wasn't there. CMON wasn't there as well. So 2 big names that I kind of would have expected to have some kind of a presence there, but neither were.
I mean, CMON just had their expo in the last month or so, right? Mm-hmm. So they probably put a lot of their resources into that. Yeah,
I don't doubt it. But I was kind of surprised to see, those are stalls that at Gen Con are generally massive. And both of them also at PAX Unplugged had pretty sizable footprints as well. So I don't particularly know why, but it's worth noting. And there were enough publishers there that it's not like anything felt missing. And honestly, one thing I really enjoyed about Origins is that since the vendor hall was so much smaller than Gen Con, it was way easier to see the small up-and-coming independent publishers. I had the chance to hang out at the Floodgate Games booth a good bit. I actually did some demoing for them. I reached out to Ben at Floodgate a few days before. He was looking for volunteers, so I demoed Sagrada and Bosk and 3 Laws of Robotics for a few hours on Friday morning, just to kind of get a feel for it. But there were so many other little independent publishers there that I got a chance to finally meet in person. We had a chance at Geekway to meet Daryl Jones, who is an artist and also a game designer. He did the art for Freshwater Fly and Into the Black Forest for Green Couch Games, and he had his own booth for Splattered Ink Games, which is his game design and publishing company. He has a game called Always Green Garden coming to Kickstarter in the near future. We actually got a preview copy of that we'll be talking about next episode because that Kickstarter launches in July. And there was just a lot of that kind of stuff where you're able to just kind of meet these new up-and-coming publishing companies. I met some people from Flat Out Games. They're doing a game called Calico, which is about quilt making and cats.
Aww.
Yeah, and it's tile laying, and it's gorgeous. It has Beth Sobel artwork, and that one's going to Kickstarter in August. We will obviously be talking a lot about Calico. So it was really interesting in a way to see so many games that were coming to Kickstarter or being released at Gen Con without the pressure of, hey, you need to buy this right now, which is kind of an interesting spin for a convention. Gen Con and PAX Unplugged are very much about buying because Gen Con is the big buying con, and PAX Unplugged is so late in the year that most games companies are just trying to get their games out there and get that product bought. But Origins really, for the name and all the jokes that we made early in the episode, it really did feel like kind of this is where gaming has started this year. And there's a lot of talk about what the beginning of the con season is. We personally start at Geekway because that's kind of the play all the games convention. But Origins felt like a beginning of this big summer con season to me.
Okay, that sounds pretty interesting. I'll take your word for that, having not been. So, it sounds like you had a really good time and that you got to see some things that normally you wouldn't have been able to see. I know at Gen Con, I generally devote at least one of the days, but usually the first day, to seeing some of those smaller publishers. Mm-hmm. But we have to split up, so that means that you don't get to see a lot of those very small publishers. So you got a chance to do that at Origins this year, so we sort of can compare notes on that, which I'm looking forward to.
One thing I will say that was kind of funny about Origins is the way that gaming itself takes place. Mm-hmm. They have a games library, but you have to buy a badge ribbon to get into that games library. It's like a $20 badge ribbon to get into their games room, the boardroom, I think is what they call it, which is kind of weird to me because when you think of a convention like PAX Unplugged, they have open gaming that you can go get games from the game library as part of your badge. Geekway obviously has the most amazing games library that we see regularly, but to kind of section that off felt a little weird, especially because there's not a whole lot of play space outside of that boardroom. I will say that apparently it's gotten better in the last few years. There's been obviously the going around joke of there's 9 tables and they're all splintering. I did see a number of very splintery tables, but I feel like there was also a good bit of table space available throughout, especially if you just watched, schedules of when events were happening at certain tables. You could generally find a spot in a lobby or something like that. So it is increasing a lot, and there is a lot more space coming around.
I mean, it's kind of makes sense that they would limit outside space if they want you to buy that additional batch rip and go. I mean, it makes sense that they want you to spend the money, so they make the nicest gaming area the one that you have to pay to get into. That's just good business.
Mm-hmm. Another thing I really enjoyed about Origins, the size of this one made it much easier to talk to people, and I really... I didn't play a whole ton of games at Origins. I spent most of my time talking with other people in the industry and talking with a bunch of other people that are gamers. And I guess, pin culture, enamel pin culture is really big at Origins, at conventions of this size as well, because PAX Unplugged, obviously, PAX brand is all about pins. But Origins does the same thing as well. They have a pin bazaar and pin trading. And a number of conversations were started from pins, either pins that I had on my lanyard from other events or ones that I picked up there, or I saw people with Adventure Zone pins. I'm like, oh, sweet, you've got a balance pin. I've got the Wonderland pin on my bag. Let's just use that as a conversation starter. And just in general, Origins was a much calmer way to talk with everybody, which was really nice. Especially, Gen Con.
Yeah. You talked a little earlier about the Punchboard Media meetup. I feel like you should give a little bit of a background and a description on that, because it is the major event for Punchboard Media in the year.
Mm-hmm. So this is the second anniversary of Punchboard Media's forming, I think. We formed just before Origins 2 years ago. Yeah, is that right?
It might be 2, might be 3. Who knows anymore?
Punchboard Media flies when you're having fun. But anyway, the Friday night, we had a big old meetup in the Unpub room that was sponsored by Renegade Games, which is very nice. Awesome of them to allow us to use that space. And we had, probably 20 or so different content creators from Punchboard Media made it out to that. So I got a chance to meet a lot of them for the first time and also meet several of them for the second, third, or fourth time. And we just had a big old party, and there was maybe probably 150, 200 people. It felt like about 200 people because we had a bag of raffle tickets, and definitely, I think we counted, when we started in the numbers and, math and all, found out it was about 200 people.
Nice.
That was a very complicated way of saying that. But we had probably 40 or 50 games we gave away, which is huge. Yours truly ended up being the person screaming the numbers out. You
somehow always end up being the person screaming numbers out.
I am loud. It works. I have a deep, booming voice, and I'm able to project myself.
Nice.
But this is a whole lot of fun. Patrick Hillier brought the Magnificent Race again, and we had a chance to play that crazy roulette-based roll and move game again. Dastardly Dan scored 0 points in this particular game, which was amazing.
Very nice.
Yes, gotcha, Dan. We got you this time. And let's see what else there was. We played a game of We're Doomed. I had a chance to get in on one of those, which was a lot of fun. There was a designer, Zach Connolly, had made a large foam version of a game he's bringing to Kickstarter called Lots. It's kind of a 3-dimensional polyomino game where you are building a tower and you're trying to stack blocks on top of other blocks to get some color adjacency, and you get points that way. You want to complete layers. But he had a giant foam version of it, which was super eye-catching and should go to every convention ever, and you should always have a chance to play this, because if you win a game of Lots, you get to knock the tower over, and if you win a game of very large Lots, you get to punch the tower over.
You didn't break his demo copy, did you?
Not at all. They're foam. It's totally fine.
Okay.
There's a video on the internet of that as well. If you would like to see that, you can go to, I think it's Royal N Games is the name of the publisher that Zach Connolly has for this game. Lots looks really fun, and it was a fun little game. I would actually like to see how it plays on the tabletop to see if it's as fun. I don't think it'll be as fun as punching a giant thing of foam blocks, but, we can hope.
Yeah, let's not harpoon this guy's Kickstarter.
I'm super excited to see it. But Punchboard Media meetup was awesome, and I definitely want to go to that again if possible. I am confused and a little frustrated about Geekway moving to the week before Origins next year. I'm hoping that it was some kind of, we got stuck with this because of the space that we are in from Geekway. Because, given the choice of the two, we'll probably end up going to Geekway, because Geekway is kind of the chill, awesome con of the year. But Origins is really good, and this is going to be a tough thing to say, I could see myself skipping Gen Con to go to Origins and PAX Unplugged in the future. Just because you get more of a chance to actually see and play games. You can easily play games at booths and at any booth.
I could see you wanting to skip Gen Con, but I
Yeah.
don't think that's going to happen.
No, that's very true, especially being in the media as we are, and Indianapolis is a fun thing. We've made a tradition and a routine of it. Gen Con is and always will be the big show. And Origins is definitely a show that if it is something available to you, you should go. It's a lot of fun, and you get a chance to play a lot of games and see them early on. Any other questions that I can answer for you about Origins?
What was the game of the con? Gotta know.
Geez,
what was
game
the
of the
game
con.
of the con?
A lot of people were playing Lanterns Dice, which
No,
was...
your game of the con.
my game of the con. Jeez. I played Lanterns Dice a lot.
Okay, so the answer is Lanterns Dice, no matter what.
Like, kind of what I gotta say is that, again, there weren't a whole ton of games released at Origins. There were a handful. I picked up Brikks there, and a handful of other things that were released. Dust in the Wings was released there. But Lanterns Dice, actually, I played a good bit because it's a very quick random-writer, and it has a really interesting thematic choices in the way that the dice are manipulated that feel like lanterns. We'll probably be talking about that one on next episode because one of our friends, Steven, got a copy of it. You have a chance to play it hopefully here soon, and we can talk about that in the future.
Okay.
Other games of the con, I mean, We're Doomed is always a game of the con. I would honestly say Lots was a ton of fun, specifically because of the circumstance. I do know. Okay, Game of the Con. I had a chance to play another game of Gilhova's Weird Stories, and he's changed it a little bit as well. Well, honestly, not a little bit. He's made some significant changes to it. But playing Weird Stories again, this is Gilhova's one-shot RPG that's kind of a David Lynchian weirdness, unexplained stuff happening, storytelling, GM-less RPG. It got me interested enough that I actually spent a decent bit of time at the Bully Pulpit and Indie Press Revolution, I think is what it's called, booths, kind of looking at RPGs and RPG supplements. I picked up a book called Microscope, which Gilhova told me was one of the influences of Weird Stories. Microscope is a one-shot GM-less storytelling RPG where you have a timeline, you have the end and the beginning, and then you fill in everything in between to kind of connect from A to B. And I actually picked up a book called Improv for Gamers from a improv comedian and gamer named Karen Twelves. And I'm really excited to look at that book and learn more about the way the improv works in storytelling RPGs. So maybe Weird Stories, the game that still is, I played like the 9th session of it ever. Maybe that was the game of Origins? Possible.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe it'll be the game of the future Origins as well.
We shall have to wait and see.
Who knows?
Gil might know.
Gil will know.
Yeah, but he probably doesn't know yet.
Probably doesn't know yet. So yeah, if you have any other questions about Origins and you want to ask them of me, you can obviously jump into the Board Game Geek Guild. You can come on the Slack channel and all those places and ask questions, or you can shoot me a tweet, or you can send me a carrier pigeon. The pigeons can't find me. That doesn't actually work. Want a second opinion on some of the games we talked about on this episode? Check out some other great content creators at punchboardmedia.com. What's this? A 6-pack and a beer segment? How oddly appropriate.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's what this is.
I guess actually this is kind of funny. So I decided for the final round this episode to ask our Slack channel about their favorite tap rooms. And us talking about this, we decided, why aren't we just doing our favorite 6 tap rooms as well? So guess what? We're doing exactly that.
Yeah, you'll get 2 6-packs even.
Ooh, that's a whole case. A whole case of words.
Now, this is specifically the spaces that we are enjoying. These are not our 6 favorite breweries each.
Yeah.
And I think that is a distinction that you and I were making specifically when we were talking about this. This is a combination of all this stuff. It has to have good beer. Because if you don't have good beer, I don't want to go there, no matter how nice your space is. But more so, this is about the environment that you're in, and a lot of times the food that they have in that environment is adding to that, but some of these don't have food, I don't think. Yeah, there's definitely a couple on this list that don't have food.
All of mine have food. Oh, no.
No,
Okay,
one of them definitely doesn't.
One of them definitely doesn't.
But most of this is about just like the feeling you get being there.
Yeah.
And that is what you had asked in the final round. Like, what makes a tap room a good tap room?
Yeah.
Not like, what are your favorite breweries? Because that's a very different question.
So what are things that make a tap room great to you? I gotta say, having a comfortable space, like if your space isn't comfy, I probably am not going to love being there. And comfy can take a lot of meanings. Like, is it couches? Is it nice big tables? Is it well lit? Is it have a patio? Just as long as it's something other than warehouse space with a big bar.
I don't know. Like I look at my list, and there is definitely one thing on my list that stands out very differently than the rest of them.
Yeah.
There's sort of a theme with most of the stuff on my list, and then I get to one thing smack dab in the middle of it that doesn't meet any of the other qualifications. So I guess there can be a lot of things that make a tap room nice, and or at least make it memorable and impactful. But not everything goes on the six-pack, and there are a couple of things that I think we should talk about that didn't make our lists for a couple of different reasons.
Yeah, I have a whole slew of honorable mentions. I'll pick a few of them out. Dogfish Head's Rehoboth Beach Brewery Pub. What is it, like Brewing Arts and Eats or something it's called like that. I like the beer. I love Dogfish Head's beer. The food is good. It is always kind of super crowded when we're in there, and I think that just might always be that we're up there during the summer also going to the beach because beach, doy.
Yeah, I mean, I like that because it's a really great brewery and brew pub that's right by the beach that I love going to. So honestly, I don't think we can give it credit for the beach and the fact that we have a free place to stay there.
Yeah, what's an honorable mention for you?
An honorable mention for me, and it feels actually more like a dishonorable mention, is the Wicked Weed downtown Asheville location. Their main location used to be amazing. We used to go there all the time. Now, for obvious reasons, we don't. Ownership, cough, cough. But their downstairs space has a patio that opens up right onto one of the doors to the orange peel. So not only do you have a really awesome tap room because they put a ton of money into it because they had a ton of money, but you also, most times when there's a show at the peel, you get a free music concert that you can listen to. It's an awesome space. I wish I had any reason to go there.
Yeah, it is kind of a bummer. I also want to throw a kind of an honorable mention out to a few one-offs that I've been to a few times. Creature Comforts in Athens, Georgia. Really cool space, great beer. And now that you can actually buy beer in Georgia tap rooms, you can actually chill there for a while. Intuition Ale Works down in Jacksonville, Florida had a really cool like grilled sandwich kitchen in addition to a very good beer selection and a nice space. They had a bonkers good grilled cheese that I had back in the day. And I have to say Cascade Brewing Barrel House in Portland. This one probably could have made my six-pack if I had been there
Earlier in the evening?
Earlier in the I went there after one or two other stops, and it remains in my mind this pinnacle of beer, because Cascade is one of those breweries that I absolutely adore. Their stuff is amazing. But to be fair, I didn't go in completely clear into that experience. So maybe it was a little bit of the haze of the Commons and Base Camp before that made it so monumentally amazing.
It was also the tail end of a really awesome trip for you, so you were probably still riding the adrenaline of driving up all of California and through Oregon and everything.
Very true.
I feel like we also need to mention Sierra Nevada outside of Asheville. And is that in
Mills
Brevard?
River?
Oh, yeah, it's in Mills River. That's right. We both thought of this, and it's an absolutely amazing space. I love their museum portion, sort of.
Yeah.
They've got these cases filled with all these historical beer implements and everything. It's really great. It's just neither one of us are huge fans of Sierra Nevada, and it felt like including, while I said that you can't just have good beer and that make you get on this list, I feel like you need to have impressive beer, and neither one of us are just that impressed by Sierra Nevada. They make excellent beer, but they're not outstanding to us. So.
Yeah. Another one on that exact note, the Stone World Bistro and Gardens in San Diego. Same thing. It was just like the Willy Wonka world of beer, and it's freaking gorgeous and amazing, and the food was so good. I had amazing sausage and peppers pasta. The beer is good. Stone's beer is very good as well, but I don't want to put that on my personal top 6 because it's not like one of my favorite spots, and that's kind of what this came out to.
It came out to favorite.
Yeah, this is a list of our favorite tap rooms. So, shall we get with the roll-ins?
Roll on.
All right. Am I starting?
You are.
Okay. So, number 6 for me in Seattle, Washington is Holy Mountain Brewing Company. I've talked about this a handful of times, and we talked about this after we had that trip up to Seattle. But Holy Mountain was a spot that I visited first at the end of that trip you just talked about. Drove from San Diego all the way to Seattle with my dad, and Holy Mountain was one of the very last stops. And I've been wanting to go there for a while, but it stood out so well after going to 30 breweries that it was one of my very favorite stops on that trip, and to go back there again and have the same experience. The tap room is kind of like the inverse image of Burial, which is obviously, good friends of mine, and unsurprisingly, you're going to hear about them later. But it's all white tile, drone metal. The beer is dark or farmhousey. It's super just like strong into whatever style it is. The people there have been great. And just the atmosphere of that place is so interesting. And it's so kind of serene in a drone metal or whatever, they happen to be playing kind of way. And then the giant garage door on the back that's right out onto the train tracks. And every now and then a train will come by and you just won't hear it. And then all of a sudden it's and it just kind of like enhances that experience in like a way that only that spot could be enhanced by a train, which is kind of a weird thing to think about. But yeah, that's why it's my number 6, Holy Mountain in Seattle, Washington.
Yeah, thinking back on that, obviously Holy Mountain's beer is very, very good, so that's the first thing you think about. But the white tile and the train are the two things that make an impression on me beyond the beer, and I understand why that would click. When you were making this list, this wasn't one of the things that you had originally talked about. And I remember I was sitting there, I was like, how is he not? And then you revised, and this did eventually make it onto the list. So
yeah. I had Unane and Hubbard's Cave on there, which I had honestly put on there on the strength of beer, but we had that discussion. I'm like, all right, fine. I guess it's not fair to put it on there. I don't love their tap room. I love the beer.
Yeah, you definitely texted me from their tap room being like, this is in a strip mall. That doesn't seem like it counts.
Oh, all right, Danielle, what's your number 6?
My number 6 is actually a very local tap room to us. It is Old Mecklenburg Brewing in Charlotte, North Carolina. They have an amazing beer garden. They have a German-style brewery, so they have your standard German styles. You've got your Bocks, and you've got Helles beers and Hefes and, very standard German styles. And they have built this German beer garden inside, which has an excellent restaurant, but they've also got an outside beer garden area that in the summer, it is always absolutely packed, and they have nice, Oktoberfest festivals there, and it is a really awesome space, and it amplifies the style of beer that they're brewing there, and it makes it feel special, like you're at this German-style brewery, and you're in this really amazing space. It is never going to be the beer that I would pick first in Charlotte, but if you told me to pick a tap room that was absolutely amazing, that would be the one that I would pick in Charlotte. It is a great place to go and just chill.
Yeah, no, I definitely am down with that. And the same thing, great festival space, especially Oktoberfest or their anniversary, and the food is pretty darn good. They do an all right job at the German food.
Yeah, and the other thing I like is it's big enough that even when it's packed, you don't feel like everybody is imposing on you. There are a couple of other spots down in the south side of Charlotte where, honestly, real estate is at a premium right now. It's a burgeoning neighborhood, and they feel crowded when they are crowded. Old Mech, unless it is packed to capacity, doesn't feel super cramped to me, which I really appreciate. So that is Old Mecklenburg in Charlotte.
My number 5 is one that we talk about at least every other episode because we have a game night coming up there, and that is Salud Cerveceria in Charlotte, North Carolina. If you ever wanted to quantify a brewery that has a vibe to it, I really have to give it to the tap room at the Salud Cerveceria. The upstairs space, and Salud in general has just grown so organically over the last 7 years. So when they opened up the upstairs tap room for the Cerveceria, it really felt like it just kind of grew out of the space that existed. And it's a fun, distinct space from the beer shop downstairs. The beer shop is very tight. It's very crowded, got a lot of bright colors and stuff like that. And upstairs, everything is very, almost like I want to say like a greenhouse kind of feel. There's plants coming, hanging from the rafters. There's a lounge in the corner with a bunch of comfy chairs and benches and stuff like that. Really big wooden tables that we obviously play board games on pretty frequently. The food program has organically grown from Waffle Witches back in the day to some just really freaking awesome pizzas, salads, and meatballs and sandwiches and all this stuff that they're doing now. And the beer has continually evolved and changed over time as well. Gone from the early days where a lot of farmhouse stuff like that, and you're getting some sours or Berliner Weisses, a really strong IPA program, some really crazy stouts with some wild adjuncts and stuff like that as well. And I love being in the space. It's so distinct for me versus other tap rooms. You feel like if I were to just say out there, hey, picture a brewery tap room, you've got an image in your mind already. Salud Cerveceria is a place that is not that. and it feels more organic than any other tap room that I've been in. Not like organic as in, dirty everything and we grew it off the ground, but it just feels like the cerveceria kind of grew into existence, and it had to be that way because that's just kind of what naturally happened.
I don't know. Every time I'm there, I always feel like it is just an improvement on the weird wine bar that used to be there before Jason bought the space.
It's definitely an improvement on that.
Yeah. I get why you like that space a lot. It's not on my list, but I understand why you like it.
Another thing I really like is that Trade and Lore Coffee is in there during the day, so if I have a day that I am working from home, I can choose to work from the coffee shop and then just roll right into my evening there.
That is beneficial.
And I can have different food for lunch and dinner if I want to. Not that I've eaten all of my meals at Salud before, but I have.
You've definitely done that.
I've definitely done that. Danielle, your number 5?
My number 5 is the Revolution Brew Pub in Chicago, Illinois. Not their new Kedzie, I think it's Kedzie Ave space. While that is a nice space, it is not the one that stands out to me when I think about Revolution spaces. First of all, it obviously, like most of the things on this list, it helps that Revolution has amazing beer. And their brew pub, while it is not their main space anymore, has a nice wide array of things that you can't necessarily find out in the wild.
Chicago Smoke?
Yeah, Chicago Smoke being one of my absolute very favorite beers that you really can only get at their locations. And they have great food at their brew pub, which is good because it's a brew pub. It should have good food.
Pizza.
It's in a fun neighborhood, which is to its credit. I really like that whole little neighborhood that they are in. And it's just a nice spot. When we go to Chicago, obviously we have stops that we make for the beer because the beer is amazing, and Revolution is a brewery that I would want to go to every time we were in Chicago. It is to their benefit that they have this awesome space that I also enjoy going to. So the Revolution Brew Pub is going to be my number 5.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. It was on my short list of things that I was thinking about, but did not quite make the cut for me. My number 4, down in Charleston, South Carolina, is Edmund's Oast. Now, they have 2 different locations, and this is specifically the one on King Street Extension, and it's kind of in this food court collective called Workshop. But it's a full-size brew pub with a big bar and this big open space in front of it where you can, take your beer out there. They've got some lawn games and stuff on the side of it, and this nice big courtyard in the middle that kind of is surrounded by all the different food establishments. But the thing that I love about this is that every time I go in there, the vibe is super strong, great energy. They have 20 or so different beers on tap, including collabs with Salud Cerveceria, which they've done 1 or 2, and just a really awesome food menu as well. I always get really great vegetables there, which is a weird thing to ever mention at a brew pub. But I had some really awesome Brussels sprouts, and I had some really good broccolini the other day. They have great wings. They have great food in general. They have pizzas and burgers and stuff like that. And I just really have appreciated the service there. I'll often sit at the bar. They have a super attentive bar staff that is super quick, and everybody's always attentive. And it's just a comfortable place, which in Charleston, which is a very tourist-heavy area, and I've been in there on the busiest nights, it's still really comfortable no matter how full it is. And I think that's due to the space being what it is. It's big enough that it's got plenty of room and plenty of tables, and a lot of people kind of wander to that outside courtyard area, but it's never so packed that you can't stand it. So yeah, Edmund's Oast down in Charleston, number 4 for me.
My number 4 is Asheville Brewing Company in Asheville, North Carolina. And this is specifically, I think they have more than one location at this point, but their Cox Ave location, their main big location. And I love Asheville Brewing Company. It is the first Asheville brewery that I really connected with. It was an awesome spot. They have really great pizza. They've got a huge outside area that people will sit in the summer and just hang out. It is a good time. They have Fire Escape, which is one of it is probably not one of my favorite beers anymore, but it is one of those beers that stands out in my mind as the thing that gives me what I want, which is spiciness in a beer without being atrocious. It's not like Tabasco sauce. It's just a nice pale ale, which has a good jalapeno flavor, but some good punch in it.
Oh, it's got the heat.
Asheville Brewing Company is a fun place to hang out. It's amazing. It does have some sentimental benefits that might have bumped it up the list a little bit for me, being as we almost got engaged there.
Yeah.
But it is an awesome space, and it's just fun to hang out in. So many things in Asheville are getting a little bit cramped because there's only so much space in the downtown area. But as opposed to something like One World, which is literally in a basement that you have to walk through the kitchen of a restaurant to get to, Astral Brewing Company still feels like open and just chill. I like it.
Yeah. My number 3 is Urban Chestnut in St. Louis, Missouri. This is specifically the Grove Beer Garden, and we actually had a meetup at this one, not this year, but last year at Geekway. A handful of people came out. We played some games, mostly Matryoshka, but I've also played a number of other board games there, and while you've got your Old Mecklenburg for your German beer hall, I have Urban Chestnut's Grove, and one thing I really like about that is that they don't just do the super tight German styles. Like, they have that. They have really great Pilsners. They've got Doppelsbocks.
I love their Zwickel beer.
Yeah, the Zwickel beer is very good. They got all that stuff, but they also do some other stuff, some farmhouses, some IPAs, a stout or two. Yeah, they have IPAs there.
No, that's not what I was furrowing my brows because I think they had some sours on at some point.
Yeah, they've had a good wide variety of stuff, but I also really love their food. They have a really great pork schnitzel sandwich that I've had 3 or 4 times that I really, really like. It's a really, really good pork schnitzel, which is a crazy thing to kind of single out, but I love their beer. I love their food, and they have really good dipping sauces for their frites as well, which is always a big plus. But the space is very big, and as a gamer, somebody who plays a lot of tabletop games, obviously because it's a board gaming podcast, even though it hasn't been for the last 20 minutes, it's a really great place to play some board games. And frankly, St. Louis is such an awesome board gaming city that I want to always have a game on me when I go there, because chances are I could probably bust that out. I played Bushido with Alex from Grey Fox back in the day before it was a game that existed. We played Matryoshka there and Bonanza and all this other stuff. Played Clans of Caledonia there with Alex and Jamie Stegmeyer and Brian Surrey, which is just that's a thing that could happen in the world, because St. Louis is great and Urban Chestnut's a great place to go play a board game.
Yeah. Doesn't really have a ton of outside space, if I remember correctly.
No, it's got a little bit of, patio seats or something, but, not a huge amount of outside seats.
Cool.
So that is my number 3, Urban Chestnut, The Grove in St. Louis, Missouri.
My number 3 is the one that I had mentioned earlier that was sort of different from all of my other tap rooms that I've talked about. So far, I've talked about 3 locations that have, strong food menus, constant kitchens that are really comfortable and nice, inviting places to go. When I thought about my 3 favorite tap rooms, they were pretty quick to come to my mind, and this one came to mind really quickly, but I don't, it's weird. It's Rheingeist in Cincinnati, Ohio, which is this really big former warehouse space. You walk up to the 3rd floor of the building to get into their tap room, and it's got these really high vaulted ceilings. And every time I'm in that space, I am taken with the space. I feel something, and I'm not really sure what it is. It's sort of an unease, but a comfortable unease in the space. It's really hard to describe, but they have very good beer. Rheingeist makes great beer. It's not my favorite beer in Cincinnati. You'll hear about that in a bit, but it is good beer, and they make lots of different styles. It's every time you go there, it's different, and just something about this space is really striking to me. If you go to their website, they have lots of very well-shot photographs, and you can look at it, and they've got a roof deck, which looks like a really awesome space to hang out if you're going to be there for more than a little bit of time, which we usually come through on the way back from Gen Con, so we're not stopping there for a very long time. But it's just such a striking space, and it hit such a weird emotional note for me that it had to be one of my top 3 favorite tap rooms, because it's the only one that just is so striking because of the space. So that's Rheingeist in Cincinnati, I guess?
No, I completely understand that, and they always have a very good selection of beer and cider, too, but it is kind of a oddly comfortable place.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. It had to be on this list for me.
Yeah. Well, across the over the Rhine area, you'll find my number 2 taproom/brewery taproom space of favoriteness, and that is
Sure.
that is Taft's Ale House in Cincinnati, Ohio. I have often referred to this as the only space I've audibly gasped when I walked into. The very first time I went to Taft's, we came up the kind of like the side door. So I guess I'll back up a little bit. It is a downtown block church that was burned out in a fire, and then the people who opened Taft's kind of reclaimed it, rebuilt it, and changed the central floor to the kind of the food area where you have the restaurant area with the big long tables, and then upstairs the balcony area has seating as well. There's a bar up there, and then kind of where the organ used to be is where the brew tanks and stuff are. So it's all like way up on the third floor of the space. And then under the main floor, you have kind of like this almost cryptorium feeling kind of bar. Is that appropriate?
I mean, I think it feels more like a choir room to me.
Okay,
but
okay. I was never in choir, so I don't know. But it's just kind of this, this darker, shorter ceiling space. And when I went to Taft's the first time, I had been to one or two other breweries, and I met some people at one brewery. We went to another one. We started in the bottom floor at the tap room down there and just kind of had one, and just decided, hey, let's go upstairs and check out the rest of the place. And we came up kind of the side stair, which actually, no, you're 100% right, because it felt like the choir stairs to walk up into the main space there. And I remember coming around the corner and walking into this giant open space with the balcony, and I just kind of like had this pause, and I'm like, oh, wow, this is awe-inspiring. And I think that's obviously due to the fact that this is a church building, and that's the entire point of the construction of this building, was to give that feeling of awe and reverence. And then they did such an amazing job reclaiming it and rebuilding it to give it that presence. And then it doesn't hurt that the beer is great and the food is freaking awesome as well. Mm-hmm. So we've made a tradition of this. Anytime we come back from Gen Con, we stop at Taft's on the way home. And I'm really glad that we have this tradition, because it's a place that I want to continually go back to.
Well, I'm certainly not going to disagree with you there. Taft's is actually my number one. It makes sense that we talk about this all at once.
You want to do that?
Yeah.
Go.
Taft's is my number one. When you said, what are your favorite tap rooms for a brewery, Taft's was the first thing in my head. It was, okay, what is after Taft's was actually the question that came to my mind. Mm-hmm. Because it is absolutely unique from any other brewery space that I've ever been in, obviously, because it didn't start as a brewery space. But they've used the space so well. The ground floor, and it's not really the ground floor, it's the main seating area of the church, which is, as is often the case with city churches, up a fairly steep flight of stairs, because they have to be able to get that first floor where Nellie's Bar, which is the name of the lower bar, mm-hmm. and that sort of choir area we were talking about, it's half below ground. So you have to go up a fairly steep flight of stairs to get to that main seating area, and they've got nice, long, community-style tables there. They've got their main bars that you can order from. You can see the menus. And then they've got a second set of seats at individual tables on the mezzanine layer, up on, I guess, what would be considered the second floor. Mm-hmm. It's just an amazing use of the space where your eye is naturally drawn. They've got that brewing equipment, so you can be like, oh, yeah, that's right, that's why we're here. All of their art in the space that is supposed to draw back to the brand is a little old-timey, but not so much so that it feels out of place in the space. Even that downstairs bar, you said it feels a little darker and the ceilings are a little lower, but it still feels, it doesn't feel like a cave. It doesn't feel how it could feel, which would be just sort of dreary down there, because you are mostly below ground. But it feels really good, and everything about that space is so great. I absolutely love it. The neighborhood is adorable as well. But Taft's is the pinnacle to me of what you want to do if you're creating a tap room.
Yeah. So my number 2, your number 1, that's Taft's Ale House.
My number 2 is Burial Beer Co., which, you got to mention it if you're us, right? But honestly, Burial has created such an amazing space. And to watch that space transform from what it was to more than I ever thought they could have done with the space that they have has been just awe-inspiring. And I am specifically talking about the original space that Burial has not the new forestry camp that they're going to be opening up, because I have problems with the forestry camp. It creeps me out. Their space started as like one dark, and talk about spaces that were dark.
Yeah, no question.
It was just like this cement dark thing, no windows, like metal mesh on the door. Definitely looked like you were going into a place that you were not going to walk out of. And they've grown that to expand, to lighten it up, to bring so much light into that front space. They've expanded the space. They now have, let's see, they've got 1, 2, 3 or outdoor areas in one single lot.
Yeah.
They've got a nice garden area where they grow things that they get put into the beers. They've got a performance area with a stage that they utilize for festivals and also just for musical performances. They've got a roof bar. They've technically got a back like loading dock area, so they've got 4 outdoor areas in this tiny space. And they have a built-in food truck, which I think has been replaced by their kitchen.
Yeah.
They had Salt and Smoky. When we were talking about food trucks a minute ago, we were talking about Salt and Smoke had been their kitchen, but now they've got an in-house kitchen which makes absolutely delicious food, like not your standard bar fare. Like, you're gonna get things that you might be a little bit more foodie focused, which makes sense for being in Asheville. It's just a great space, and to have friendly faces in it really does help. That's never going to be a downside, to be walking and be like, oh, these are people that I know are good people and they care about their beer, and you can taste how much they care about their beer. But even without knowing that about them, walking into that space is just dang impressive every time. And they utilize it in all 4 seasons, and Asheville does have winter. Charlotte may not have winter, Asheville has winter. So, like, they utilize it and they've made it useful for them in all kinds of weather. They've just got a great space there at Burial Beer Co.
Is anybody in the world surprised that Burial Beer Co. is my number 1 tap room, my number 1 favorite tap room, my number 1 favorite beer place, and probably, honestly, my favorite place to be that's not the house or a home of, us or relatives, and honestly, a place that I'd rather be than some relatives, probably. No, Burial has been friends of us since they opened, and I still remember going in, Doug at the bar, Tim at the bar, Jess at the bar, and just all 3 of them being there from day one, building this thing. And like I talked about Salud a bunch of numbers ago and talked about how the space kind of organically grew. Burial feels like it was excavated, as if it was discovered in a way, because they haven't added on significantly to the building. They've added on the roof deck and, they've, added on the side kind of covering patio. But everything else, all that space existed. They just reclaimed it. They uncovered the space that was Burial's tap room and garden and outdoor space, as if it was something that had always been there and was just waiting for them to kind of come in and discover. Their warehouse on the side of the building was just another building that happened to be connected to the space that they opened up, and eventually they moved in there and they just kind of claimed that space as well, obviously legally and, through actual proceedings. Doug's a lawyer, so he knows how to do these things correctly. But it feels like a place that was simply discovered. And since the first time I walked in there and the bar was 6 seats long and the brew setup was right on top of you, to now when they have forestry camp that they're doing all of their clean production and the current space just has all of their barrel aging and the tap room, the bar extended. Like, I just came back once and the bar was 10 seats longer and I was like, what in the world?
But I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll take it. And honestly, when I came back and the bar was longer, it felt natural. It felt like this is the way it always was. They just had to, like, somebody just grabbed the walk-in cooler and dragged it 20 feet.
The other thing, I didn't mention this earlier, but I think it's definitely worth noting, is that they have made it so that the space has multiple bars in it, which, for such a small space, they could have gotten away with just having their main bar. It's a substantial bar. It's got enough taps on it. But to utilize that space better when they have a ton of people in there, because it's not a huge plot of land, it's really nice to be able to have multiple points. Like, when they have a festival, they have 4 bars set up, and they all kind of make sense. One of them's a little bit of a stretch, but like, they have 3 legitimate spots for bars, and 2 of them are built into the building. So it's really nice to have that. You have that nice long bar at the front, but you've also got a back bar, which is often functional. You'll get different stuff on back there, and you don't have to try to squeeze your way, because they understand the limitations of their space. There is a section of their space that is kind of narrow to get through, right by the restrooms where it comes out to the outside. But they took those limitations and they worked with them to make them not a problem.
Yeah, and it's a place that I will probably always feel comfortable in and always feel welcomed in, and that's something that's just due to the amazing team at Burial and the home that they've created. So it's no surprise, again, to anybody that Burial Beer Company is my number one most favorite tap room in the world. Yeah. So anyway, we also asked the Slack channel about these things, and we will get to that right now. All right, so the final round, I asked the Slack channel, rather than board games, let's do beer this episode. What's your favorite brewery tap room? What makes it special to you? The beer, the atmosphere, or the space itself? ... Mark Cale will start us out. And by the way, actually, I should say right up front, if you go to megamoosecon.com, you can get tickets for Mega MooseCon, which is October 25th through 27th. Tickets are on sale now, and we will be there because it is our local hometown con of choice.
That is relevant because Mark runs Mega MooseCon.
Yes, no, just apropos of nothing, go get your Mega MooseCon tickets. No, Mark Cale says, Legal Remedy in Rock Hill, South Carolina. I like all of their beer offerings. World Court Mocha Blonde Stout is one of my absolute favorite beers. They also have a restaurant on premises. Go hungry if you are going to eat or be ready to take home a box. The downside is it's very loud. Very, very loud. Our friend Bert chimed in on this one, said Legal Remedy is a good one. The only place I've had a goza. They had a pink guava goza, and it was so good.
I called guava.
You did call guava. Guava is the ingredient of 2019.
Danny Doherty says, I don't know what my favorite one is, but I want to give special props out there to all the micros clever enough to put themselves in local airports. I know I've gone out of my way to make layovers happen at Lambert because Schlafly has a couple of tap rooms there.
Yes, they do. I have definitely partaken in that tap room. Their pizza was weird. St. Louis pizza is weird. Do you know about St. Louis pizza?
I don't think we should insult St. Louis's pizza.
I wasn't insulting it, saying it's weird. It's square-cut, thin-crust pizza, and they use this cheese called Provel.
Huh.
I don't know what that is. It's not provolone. It's Provel.
Cool.
Yeah. Brandon Rojas says, I'm going to first preface this by saying I work on and off at this place, so I'm biased. But the atmosphere of the place and the incredible beer is what made me first really dig the place and eventually ask to start helping out, but Manskirt Brewing in Hackettstown, New Jersey. It's not a big or well-known brewery, but what makes it really cool is that it's inside an old bank. When you walk in and go straight back, there's a big-ass old-school vault door. The vault also serves as their merch area now, but it's a pretty neat defining feature. Also in New Jersey, I really like Cape Ray's brewery space. They have a really nice outdoor area that's pretty great to just sit and have a few beers in the summer. I'd also be foolish not to bring up Dogfish Head in Delaware. They have an incredible outside space with bocce courts, cornhole, permanent food truck, and a big old treehouse. Plus their beer is always wonderful. And he's talking about the one in Milton.
The production brewery.
Yeah, rather than the one in Rehoboth that I talked about.
Yeah, and we've definitely been to that quite a number of times.
Oh, yes.
And it is certainly a cool space. Their outside space, I feel like, is what makes it shine. He's talking about the bocce courts and the treehouse and the outside food truck. Their inside space is more of a kind of like a merch shop, but I absolutely love their outside space. And it's in an area that is warm enough because it's right by the ocean. You get like a nice moderate temperature a lot of the time. Chris Whitpan says, really like Victory in Downingtown, Pennsylvania. It has been amazing to watch them grow, and the beer on tap is always very diverse and fun. Victory is definitely one of my favorites as opposed to Victory is definitely a standout to me when it comes to that general area's beer. I remember when I first started drinking craft beer, Victory's Donnybrook Stout was one of my very favorite first beers to start drinking. So I have also been watching Victory expand, and it's really nice to see they've got a second location, and I think they have the brewers at 401 Yancey. They're coming down here even. Yep,
the Victory, 6 Point, and Southern Tier are that building together here in Charlotte.
I hear you, Chris.
Yeah. Josh Hengler says, I haven't made it to many tap rooms yet, but I have to give some love to my hometown Logboat Brewing here in Columbia, Missouri. In just a few short years, they've become a really positive presence in town, offer some tasty tap options like Go-Go Radio Stout, and have a family-friendly outdoor space for events, or just tossing a frisbee. Santa visits every year at their candy cane crib. He put some pictures of both these things in the Slack channel, and also they are opening a second location where they plan to be more quote-unquote experimental.
Ooh, if it's a second location, that sounds like it's going to be more wild ales.
Yes.
Because you need to keep those separate.
Keep that stuff separate.
BJ from Board Game Gumbo.
That's Mr. from Board Game Gumbo to you.
It is not to me, because I'm not changing the contact in my phone.
All right.
He says, my favorite one closed down, but we have 2 others. The one I'm going to go to next Sunday has a jam session with food. It's Bayou Teche Brewery.
A jam session with food.
Nice.
Burial used to do a Sunday jazz brunch. I wonder if they're still doing that at all.
It's possible.
Will Foy says, I always loved the functional simplicity of Madison River Brewing Company's space in Belgrade, Montana. I'd play cribbage or mahjong with my pastor, eat some popcorn, and snag a couple of pints of their regional award-winning barley wine. All their stuff was named after fly fishing lures, like Yellow Humpty was a tasty Hefeweizen, Black Ghost a reasonable porter. What made it nice is that it served as a good neighborhood third place, not home, not work, and long-timers could leave an extra pint for others on the board and pay it forward, as well as purchase your own hand-blown mugs to leave on the wall for when you'd come in. It wasn't splashy or trendy, just good people and good beer.
Jeff Epner said, Boulevard's Tap and Tasting Building is downright impressive. Tons of space and a good place to hang out, even though the beer leaves some to be desired. I think Casey Brewing in Colorado is also a great one. Views, comfort, and space are important to a great day-long experience. I couldn't agree with that last sentence more.
I can only imagine how some of the views in some Colorado tap rooms are, especially if you're out in the mountains or out in the less urbanized areas more. Ooh, we gotta get out there at some point.
Okay, that's like the second time this month you've said that. We'll get out there.
All right, and as is tradition, Patrick Hillier has the last word in the final round, and he says Taft's Ale House in Over the Rhine, Cincinnati. Someone on a beer podcast told me about it. They're in a cool old church. They converted the organ area to where the beer tanks are, so it feels like you're worshiping the beer. Who doesn't, right? There's lots of fun side rooms, upper balconies, and the group tables with benches feel like pews. Pew pew. They are well known for their tri-tip steak, and they recently opened their Brewporium, which is just a fancy garage end of their distribution warehouse that serves up some awesome pizza just down the street from my office. Wonder where you heard about Taft's.
I don't know, but
what a great spot.
I think all the great minds are thinking alike on this one.
Oh, man. You know what's great about it being 40 days to Gen Con?
That it's like 45 days to Taft's.
45 days to tri-tip steak for dinner at that place. Not the best song I've ever written. Let's end the episode. Hey, everybody, thank you so much for sticking around to the end of this episode of Draft Mechanic, or for tuning in at all and then skipping to the end. Kind of a weird way to experience your podcast, but chase your bliss. Do what you gotta do. You can find us on the internet. DraftMechanic.net is the one-stop shop for all your Draft Mechanic needs. On social media, we are at Draft Mechanic on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Once again, your carrier pigeons cannot find me. I have masked my pigeon sense or something. I don't know. Danielle, save me from this sentence.
We have a Board Game Geek Guild that is guild number 2470. If you have anything to add to our conversation, that is the place to do it. If you happen to be in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, our next meetup is going to be on Thursday, July 4th at Good Road Cider Works. So if you're off from work, come out and play the games.
And lest you forget, Draft Mechanic is sponsored by Gray Fox Games. Visit grayfoxgames.com and sign up for their newsletter for the latest. Gray Fox Games, quality games, cleverly crafted. No, there's no third part of that sentence. I feel like I'm missing something right here.
Well, as always, I would like to remind our listeners to please game responsibly and tell them that I'll see them back here in 2 weeks for another round.
All right, good night, everybody.
Night.
Draft Mechanic episode 103 was recorded on Thursday, June 20th, 2019 in front of a live studio cat.
Beauty is in your eyes, you are the beholder. You render me stricken. Do not go gently into that gutter.
Hey, board gamers, BJ from Board Game Gumbo here, back with more Louisiana flavor. Tornado, mes chiens. We love talking board games. That's why we started up Gumbo Live, the #1 Facebook live talk show dedicated to board gaming. Each week, we interview guests from your hobby, publishers, designers, content creators, and you get to ask them whatever you like. It's a live show. So join us at Board Game Gumbo on Facebook every Tuesday night at 8:30 p.m. Central for another episode of Gumbo Live. And until next time, laissez le bon temps rouler.
Punchboard Media,
where we all bring something to the table.
Pull up a chair
at punchboardmedia.com.